clearly, point by point. Who are you? The question of the Odyssey. Where are you from? Your city, your parents. And Athena then will lie. She tells her story. She does mention Laertes for the first time, the father of Odysseus, because she says, I was a friend of your grandpa's, of your father's father. And at line 215 or so, as for ties between your father and myself, we've been friends forever, I'm proud to say, and he would bear me out if you went and questioned, O Lord Laertes. He, I gather, no longer ventures into town, but lives a life of hardship, all to himself outside of town. Let's point out for your notes that Laertes, the father of Odysseus, is living a very similar kind of life that Odysseus is living on the island of the Cyclops, right? Of Calypso, right? Athena then will tell of Odysseus, say that she knows that in fact Odysseus is still alive at line 240 or so. She says to Telemachus, you're truly Odysseus' son. You've sprung up so uncanny resemblance, the head, the fine eyes. I see him now. I see Odysseus in you. How often we used to meet in the old days before you embarked for Troy. And yet Telemachus will respond, I'll try, my friend, to give you a frank answer. Mother's always told me I'm his son, it's true, but I'm not so certain. Who, on his own, has ever really known who gave him life? This will be a line that we think of when we get to the Oedipus story, right? Who would to God I'd been the son of a happy man, whom old age overtook in the midst of his possessions. Now, think of the most unlucky mortal ever born, since you asked me. Yes, they say I am his son. Athena will come back to reassure him. And she will say, wait, what's going on with these guys? I mean, some kind of wedding feast, some festival, some kind of potluck supper? How obscenely, she says about them, they lounge and swagger. Why, any man or sense who chanced among them would be outraged seeing such behavior. In other words, they're completely violating any rules of Xenia. Obviously they are, right? And Odysseus will come back, Telemachus will come back, and he'll say about his father, well, my dad was here, this kind of thing wouldn't be happening. And he says at line 280, my father is lost, gone now, out of sight, out of mind, and he's left me tears and grief. Nor do I rack my heart in grief for him alone, no longer. Now the gods have intervened, other miseries to plague me, right? And then he'll say it, these guys, they court my mother at line 290, they waste my house. Mother, he says, neither rejects a marriage she despises, nor can she bear to bring the courting to an end while they continue to bleed my household white. Soon, you wait, they'll grind me down as well. And then he says it, these guys are going to eat me out of house and home. Notice, interestingly, poor Penelope, she is really stuck. Is her husband dead, and therefore she's a widow? Or does she take another man while she doesn't know whether her husband is dead, and then that makes her an adulterer, which obviously makes her unfaithful? We think of Clytemnestra. Poor Penelope, she's got no way to win. Athena will say at line 293, 294, this is shameful. She says, oh, how much you need Odysseus, gone so long. If only he would appear now, she says, right? If only that Odysseus, she says at line 310 or so, sported with these suitors, a blood wedding, a quick death would pay them back. In other words, it's clear that what we got going on here is the foreshadowing of what comes. However, she says, I urge you, line 311, think how to drive these suitors from your halls, she says, right? Take my words to heart. At daybreak, summon the island's lords to full assembly. Tell the suitors to scatter. Then she says, a few lines later at 320, fit out a ship with 20 oars, go to Pylos, find King Nestor, then go on to Sparta, and she says, meet Menelaus. Okay? In other words, it's time, is what she says, right? If he's dead, Odysseus, then fine, give your mother to another husband, right? Then, once you've sealed those matters, seen them through, think hard. Reach down deep in your heart and soul for a way to kill these suitors in your own house by stealth or in open combat. In other words, however, we know it's going to be by stealth and then ultimately open combat, right? Line 340. You must not cling, I read these lines earlier, these are famous lines. You must not cling to your boyhood any longer. It's time you are a man. And then she mentions Orestes. Haven't you heard what glory Prince Orestes won throughout the world? when he killed that cunning murderous Aegisthus who killed his famous father. And you, my friend, how tall and handsome I see you now. Be brave, you too. So men to come will sing your praises down the years. In other words, you could become heroic. But now I must go, she says, back. And then, famous, it all rests with you. Interestingly, Telemachus will say, you've counseled me with so much kindness, like a father to a son. This is, of course, what Telemachus has been missing, right? We're told that she will leave, right? But when she left, we're told at line 370, Telemachus' spirit was filled with nerve and courage, right? A man like a god himself. Meanwhile, everyone's singing. Down comes Penelope at line 380, radiant woman, drawing her veil across her cheeks. We think of Andromache losing her veil at the end of the Iliad, right? And the poet is singing a song about Troy and the fall of Troy. At line 390, Mama says, break off this song, the unendurable song that always rends the heart inside me, the unforgettable grief, it wounds me most of all. How I long for my husband. Telemachus comes back. Many have had problems with the way Telemachus treats Penelope here. It's his first moment of leaving, if you will, of leaving his boyhood innocence and being able to tell his mother what to do. Within especially Greek culture, this is a pivotal moment. He says, why, mother? Why deny our devoted bard the chance to entertain us any way the spirit stirs him on? Bards are not to blame. Zeus is to blame. Notice the genius of this poem. Zeus begins by saying, gods are not to blame for the pain suffering of humans. Notice it's here, the poets aren't to blame, it's Zeus's fault. He deals to each and every labor on this earth, whatever doom he pleases. Why fault the bard if he sings the Argives' harsh fate? It's always the latest song, the one that echoes last in the listener's ears, the people praise the most. That's fascinating, given that the Odyssey is the second poem of the two, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Why is it that people maybe love the Odyssey more? It's the second poem, it's the last one that we hear. And then he says it, courage, mother, harden your heart and listen. Odysseus was scarcely the only one you know whose journey home was blotted out in Troy. Others, so many others, died there too. It's often lost on us, let's put it in our notes, that the suitors who were here causing so much grief were young men when their fathers all left and went off to fight at Troy. Most of them lost their fathers at Troy. Odysseus never came back with their fathers. In other words, what happens when you have a bunch of young men who are raised without the advantage of having a dad to tell them what to do or keep them in line? Here we go. A lot of bad problems, the poet is suggesting. And finally he finishes, so, mother, at line 410, go back to your quarters, tend to your own tasks, the distaff and the loom, and keep the women working hard as well. As for giving orders, men will see to that. But I, most of all, I hold the reins of power in this house. You'll maybe remember that this is echoing lines. This is exactly what Hector told Andromache when she tried to make some kind of battle plans in the city of Troy in Iliad 6. And Hector said very similar thing. Leave the fighting to the men. Here, I'm in control. I'm in power. Whoa, Mama, we're told. Astonished, she withdrew to her own room. She took to heart the good, clear sense in what her son had said. In other words, she was happy about the way that Telemachus speaks to her because he's taking over. And she likes that. Then she goes up and she cries in her room because obviously no Odysseus. The next one we have, the next scene we have are the suitors. They break into an uproar and he speaks to the suitors at line 421. You suitors who plague my mother, you insolent, overweening. For this evening let us dine and take our pleasure. No more shouting now. What a fine thing it is to listen to such a bard who sings like a god. But at first light, he says, I give my orders and say to you straight out, you must leave my place, my palace. See to your feasting elsewhere. If you decide the fare is better or richer, carve away. Go find somewhere else to eat. I'll crown to the everlasting gods and hope that Zeus will pay you back with a vengeance. In other words, he calls down the possibility of Zeus. So Telemachus declared, we're told, and they all bit their lips amazed. So notice, Mom is astonished and the suitors are amazed the prince should speak with so much daring. Antonius will say, whoa, pretty brave talk at line 440, right? I pray that Zeus never makes you king of Ithaca. It's an irony because, of course, after an arrow is through Antonius's throat, he won't have much to say here at the end of our poem, right? Notice Antonius will come back, will say this. Telemachus will banter with him, and he'll say, you know what? if Zeus wants me to be king of Ithaca, I'll be king of Ithaca. But you definitely, I'm getting rid of you guys. Eurymachus is the other bad guy, and he says as much. And he asks, hey, who was that person you were talking to? Telemachus will lie, and he'll say, Eurymachus clearly says at line 470, my father's journeys home is lost forever. I no longer trust in rumors. Some wizard has been called into the house, maybe, but he says, I don't buy it. My dad is not coming back. Let's point out already that Telemachus is pretty shrewd for a young man. Already he's acting kind of like his father. He doesn't say at all what Mentas or Athena had to say, right? We then are told that Telemachus with Eurycula, the servant in the house who has taken care of him from the very beginning at line 490 or so. She's the grandson's escort now, bore a torch. She was the one of all the maids who loved the prince the most. She takes care of him. A nice little kind of additional at line 500. She takes his clothes. She hangs them up. You get kind of a sense that Telemachus is maybe a little bit spoiled, a little bit pampered, a little bit taken care of. Telemachus will be a different boy by the end of our poem. At the very end of the poem, we're told that he weighed in his mind the course that Athena had declared for him. Well, let's go ahead now quickly and play the game at level 2A. Some of the major messages and themes here. Notice Ithaca is kind of a representative model in many ways of what Xenia is not supposed to look like, the suitors, and what it is supposed to look like, the way that Telemachus helped Athena Mentas when she came down. Notice that Telemachus is stuck. Penelope is stuck. They're stuck in a situation they cannot get out of. This is an important theme of this text. What do you do when you're stuck in a situation you can't get out of? Oh, here's another major message. Athena said it, right? It's time to grow up, right? When things get hard, right? We've said this before about that theodictic question. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? We have to learn to ask, why did this happen for me? Certainly Athena is pushing him in that direction, right? The blame game, notice here. It's not the gods, it's not the poet, right? It's interesting to play that game. We then will have Telemachus's Odyssey. That is to say, books 1 through 4, right? Now let's play 2B really quickly. Our symbolism here at play, well, Telemachus and the Bildungsroman, he symbolizes a kid who's got to mature into a man, right? Of course, the poet as well is kind of a symbol. A story of weaving is this story, a story of twists and turns. Odysseus is going to be a symbol of the man of suffering, no question for us. And the irony here at 2B will be that Odysseus will be coming home. And, of course, Telemachus is an instinctive liar as well. This is ironic, just like his father. Notice, they tell me that he's my dad. I don't know for sure. That will as well be ironic because by the end of the poem, Telemachus will know that he is his father's son, right? At 3A, how do we connect this to other texts? Well, let's just start with the Iliad. Notice the connections. The invocation of the muse. Notice the similarities. Notice the differences as well, right? The youth, well, we're going to see this one from the Iliad. In the Iliad, it's going to be Nestor's son Antilochus. Here, in our poem, it's going to be emphasized Orestes. Notice we have the poet, the similarity of poets singing. Remember Achilles was singing in Book 9 when the suitor, or the supplicants came, right? The embassy from Agamemnon came. We have that line, they reached out their hands for the good things, from Book 24 of Iliad being mentioned here as well, right? Notice how as well the poet plays differently with this line, right? From the Iliad, and then of course here. There, it's in the Iliad serious business. Here it's the suitors showing that basically they just love the party. Of course, we've already mentioned the Bildungsroman, the coming of age story. Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, put that one in your notes, as a novel by James Joyce that we'll be studying later. Dickens' Great Expectations also comes to mind. Of course, think about the Hamlet line. Later we'll study Hamlet, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. Very much like the Telemachus character as well. He is upset, but he can't do anything about it. He's kind of stuck, right? finally at 3b, let's play this game. What was the time when you were told, grow up? And how did you respond to that? Did it make you mad? I mean, Athena has told Telemachus this. It's kind of given him a sense of, you know what, she's right. I need to take control. He tells his mom what to do. He's going to tell the suitors what to do. What was a time that you had to do something you were afraid to do? Telemachus is obviously, I mean, he can't sleep because he's going to get up in the morning. He's going to tell these guys what for, and he knows it's going to be rough on him. What was a time that you had to tell your parent, the way Telemachus has to tell mom, to stand down? I got this. Don't worry about that. I got this. As you get older, you will find that this is an interesting moment, right? Because if you and your parents both live long enough, we know what's coming. You're sooner or later going to have to begin to tell them, I love you, but you can't drive anymore. Give me the keys. If you need to drive, I will take care of that for you. What's that moment going to be like? Telemachus is coming to that moment with his mother. Well, let's get on now to book 2. Telemachus is going to have his meeting, and of course, he's going to take off on his own Odyssey that we will then watch through the next 3 books of the Odyssey. Thank you.